Welcome back to the Black and Raw podcast. I'm your host, Tino Kuda Tondorai Vunzalbaya. No, I ain't gonna repeat that. Here's a podcast that's creating the dialogue and the space for black men to be their most authentic selves. Now, my guest today is Fola Lawson. Fola like cola. And Fola, I was about to call him Lawson. Fola comes onto the podcast today to talk about his entrepreneurial journey. Fola has created a men's clothing brand called Southern Gents, and if you go and check out the Instagram or check out the website, you'll see that it's sort of vintage with a modern twist, and I really like the clothes that he's got on there and the style and even the stuff that he does in terms of he makes YouTube videos and he creates content to help men dress better. So apparently I don't have any style according to my family, so maybe I do need a bit of those videos, but I think you guys are really going to enjoy this episode. Me and Fola talk about so many interesting things. We talk about his experiences in accounting and finance and how that set him up to later go into business. How Southern Gents got started and everything. We talk about his fatherhood and the importance of family and love and loving relationships. And so it's a very diverse and interesting conversation, and I know you guys are going to get some real good nuggets of value out of this. So give me a few seconds. I'm going to show you what you got to look forward to in this episode. This is a bit of a longer episode, so I do apologize, but I think you guys are going to love it anyway. So tell me what you think in the comments, or drop me a message wherever you're listening to this. So here's what you got to look forward to in the episode.
The people are in love. There's a book called an E-Myth. The E-Myth. Heard of that before. The E-Myth is about the entrepreneur myth, and the myth that everybody thinks that they're going to start a business and they're just going to strike it rich. When if you look at the facts, something like 80 to 90% of businesses are small businesses, and 80 to 90% of those businesses the owner takes home a pay of $60,000 to $40,000 a year. They're just working to keep the lights on. They may make $300,000, $400,000 a year, but when they take employee inventory or service payroll costs out of it, they're not really making that much. And so the argument of the E-Myth is that a lot of people are better off closing their doors and just getting a job, or you have to really revamp your business. An entrepreneur is a beautiful thing because sky is the limit, right? You can make $100 million a year if you're really good at it. But that's not the case for most businesses. And the facts show that. So we just have to we just have to rethink and push the reset button on how we see the world. There's definitely pros and cons to both sides. But I think that at the end of the day, it just depends on what's the best lifestyle for you? What kind of lifestyle do you want to live? If a lot of people think that the most common thing I hear when people talk about starting a business is like, oh, I want to start a business so I can set my own hours. Guess what? Your hours are going to be 12 to 12 midnight to 8. Yeah, I've heard so that. That's really like you're going to work 10 times as hard. So if you really want to start a business, there has to be a deeper reason why you want to start the business. And you have to ask yourself and be accountable if you're really cut out for that type of lifestyle.
Yeah, it is. And another child as well.
Tino, you took the words right out of my mouth, because one thing that I forgot to mention, and you just did beautifully, is remembering to be present. One of the things that my son does, or the best thing he does, is there some times where I'm just banging away at the laptop as usual, because ain't no such thing as work-life balance. But he'll come to me and he'll just like, no, and he'll like close my laptop with his hand. And I'm just like, and I feel so bad, because I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. I'm ignoring you. I'm here, but I'm not here. And those moments are really powerful for me, because this person who's not even been here on this earth more than 24 months could tell that I'm not engaged and I'm not interacting with them, and my mind is somewhere else. And every time he does that, it's kind of like, someone could tell you, like your mom could tell you, Tino, you've been on that game too much, or whatever, yeah. Right? Like you need to stop doing that. But it's just like the ultimate, like, it's kind of like a hand of God, like just stop.
You're good.
Exactly. You're done for the day. And I'm like, okay, I just put it up, and it's just like, and I just look at him and I smile. And I could be having a shitty day, could be having a rough day. I could be, responding fiercely to an email or whatever has happened that day. All those feelings just go away. And it just reminds me that nothing else matters. And it's really it's not that deep. You know what I mean? Like the gift of life is being present. And sometimes we just got to enjoy it. We just got to enjoy being here.
Yeah, definitely.
So now that you got a little snippet of what you got to look forward to in this episode, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode wherever you are listening, wherever you are watching. If you're watching on YouTube, then leave a comment, subscribe. If you're listening on the podcast stream, then send me a message, subscribe to the podcast because it helps the podcast grow, and share it with your friends because that also helps more people hear this message. And I think you guys are going to want more people to hear this message. So I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Here is my conversation with Fola Lawson.
So Fola, welcome to the Black and Raw podcast. It's really good to have you on.
Thanks for having me, Tino. I'm super excited to be here and excited to have a wonderful, wonderful conversation with you today.
No, that's blessed. That's blessed. No, thank you very much. And for those watching on YouTube, they can't see your setup, and you're looking fly today, my friend.
I appreciate it.
Camouflage in the background works so well. I really like it. I really like it.
Yeah, we're going to war. It's a time. We're going to battlefield. But no, this is what we do. We're I'm a stout enthusiast, so I always try to every day just use it as an opportunity to be a little bit creative and have fun with what I'm wearing. So today I just felt like being a little bit militant, so I threw on the field jacket, and yeah, we're here.
No, brilliant. I love it. I love it. And I guess we can get started sort of because as you were saying, you like to be creative with your fits and stuff like that. Probably you having a clothing company, I mean, it probably aligns really well with who you are. So could you tell my audience a bit about Southern Gents and how Southern Gents got started as well?
Yeah, it's quite an interesting story. I had just graduated from university for a couple years and I was working. I started getting a little bit bored. I kind of wasn't seeing anything like that was inspiring me. So I started wanting to go to different places and I'm like, where is there to go? I'm making a little bit more money now. I'm not stopping in at the drive-through at McDonald's all the time. So I'm like, where is the swanky stuff? And it just wasn't there. So I figured, why not just try to create it? So I talked to a couple of my friends and I'm like, hey, we all had jobs at this time, like friends I had gone to school with, and just had this crazy idea of just creating this like networking event. We had everybody knew somebody. And at this time, we had the opportunity, we had the Facebook at our fingertips. You got a couple of friends in your Facebook list, like everybody brings somebody and, we get 30 to 50 people in a room and it'll be a great time. And so I also wanted to take it an extra step. So it's like, how about we try to find a place that was not just typical? So made a couple of rounds with some hotels in the area downtown because they usually have this really nice upscale lounges, and you knock on a couple of doors and someone says yes. This downtown hotel said yes. It was a small little cozy room. I had a friend who's a DJ. He offered to DJ for free.
Oh, cool.
Set it up, did a Facebook invite. Everybody started adding people. We made it look like super GQ and like, hey, just come as you are. Like, just come in your, because everybody thinks that I got to get off work, go home, change. Like, no. We're not trying to do all that because at that point it'll be 9 p.m.
And
we're trying to get you.
Are they?
Exactly. So I'm like, let's get you in here from 5:30 to 7:30 or 8:30, whenever. And I mean, it was amazing. People showed out in droves and, first a couple guys showed up and then the ladies show up and the rest is history. Once the ladies show up and the ladies like, where are the rest of the guys? So it was amazing. And we just decided to keep it going. Over the years, we decided to just transform it into what we call an accessory line, just offering accessories to men, things that'll help them spice their style up a little bit. And it's just kind of grown from there. It was this little like mustard seed, a baby, just a thought, and just put it out into the world. And everyone was really receptive to it. And 10 years later, here we are.
No, brilliant, brilliant. And you said you had been to college first, and you and your mates came from college. What did you do at college, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh no, I studied accounting and finance. So I actually graduated I did this 5-year program. It was like a combined undergrad and graduate program. Got a job in an accounting firm, and I started doing auditing, which was a swell career because what you do is you basically go in different companies and you just check out their books.
Yeah.
So it was like every 3 to 4 weeks or so, I was working in a different team of people who were my age or 3 to 5 years younger. So it's a pretty young um, workforce. And then you just got to see so much. You got to see different types of businesses from manufacturing to healthcare. It was a really interesting experience. And so, I'm coming in there as a young Black kid. And
Yeah.
sometimes I come up knocking. So and they're like, well, who is this guy? We weren't expecting him.
I'm your auditor, bro.
Exactly. Exactly. And so you got to look like something, or else they're looking at you like you just came to deliver the mail. Not that there's anything wrong with delivering the mail, but as you can imagine, in America and here in Texas, there's just not really high expectations of young Black men. So I think all those things were motivation for me to keep just fine tuning my style because I really wanted to manage how people saw me. And and once I started doing it, I started noticing uh the difference in respect levels and just people just being welcoming to me. So I'm like, hey, I'm just gonna keep doing this.
Oh yeah, brilliant. Yeah, no, I mean, whenever you go somewhere and you sort of dress up for the occasion, or even if you go to work, you put a fly outfit together.
Mhm.
My parents say I have no style, and my sister also says that too. So I'm trying to come up with a new style.
You'll
But
get there, man.
yeah,
It
yeah, yeah,
takes a little practice.
but even when you're in a suit, like you just feel good, you feel better about yourself. I feel like you can present quite a good version of yourself, really. Like I think anyone that dresses up knows that, like, yeah, when you've done that, you sort of feel good. Um,
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be a suit. It could be
mm,
something as good as a well-pressed polo tucked in, the right shoes. Like just take care of yourself. Act like you cared. Act like you actually thought about, what you were putting on your body and coming out the house. I think a lot of times people overthink it, but it's really not that difficult.
yeah, definitely. So you went from accounting and sort of you had the sort of stereotypical African thing of you had a stable job, you were probably going to make good money being an accountant as well. One of my friends actually she's learning to be an accountant, and she does auditing.
Oh,
So
sweet.
like whenever we Snapchat, she's telling me about places that she's going to and stuff like that. So you had the stable job, which probably would have gotten you quite a bit of money. And so I guess, why did you want to pivot into Southern Gents? Like why was that something that you wanted to start? I know we got onto the beginnings of how it started, but
Mhm.
why did you want to sort of pivot?
That's a brilliant question because at first I didn't want to pivot. At first I was just bored. I just wanted more things to do in my spare time when I was off work because I was working pretty hard. I mean, in that career, you work 10 to 12-hour days.
Wow.
So in the weekend, I'm ready to let loose, you know what I mean? Like ready to turn up. But I think uh, one trait of mine, just like a characteristics, I've always tried to be really good at whatever it is that I just ended up doing. So at first, it was just something just doing on the side, and it was just a leisure activity. But then, like 5 years into the professional workforce and professional career, I got bored and I got uninspired, and I also felt really, really limited. I almost feel like there was a ceiling over me. I remember I was at one job and I'm like, I should be doing so much more. But I was like 25, 26, and my boss was like twice, if not more than twice my age. I think she was
Mm.
like 58, 59. And I'm just like, man, I'm just gonna wait in line. I'm just gonna have to
Yeah.
wait, like traffic, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
if she's twice, like so for me, I felt like I was moving slow
Yeah.
in
Okay.
everyone else's eyes and probably her eyes as well. It's just like, oh, he's ahead of the game. He's, you know what I mean? I'm just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. No,
fuck. I'm gonna have to sit here and just like
bad my
be stuck
time.
in this cubicle for the next 30 years. And I'm like, it just didn't sit well with me. So I actually had other business ideas. I always had business ideas as a kid.
What
I
were
remember
some
when
of them?
the very first one was a barbershop. because when I was younger and I played football in high school, I cut like pretty much everybody's on the team's hair. So I was really good at cutting hair because I've always had an artistic skill set, good with drawing. So it's just like, okay, you just fade kind of like you're sketching and then you
Painting
just
in your
draw
head.
fine lines. It's a painting, really. You're painting. So, but I always have been a very practical person. And as a kid, I would do the math and I would just put it on a piece of paper and I would like, okay, I could cut however many heads a day at $10 a day, and I would add it up, and I didn't like the sum that I came up with. I'm like, nah, that's not good enough. So it
I'm
just
working
never
all
made
this
sense.
day, not making
So I
making this much. No, I'm gonna do something else.
exactly, exactly. So I never went forward with that. But the first thing I did try to do is I did try to do some sort of small business consulting on my own since I had so much business experience. And man, that was rough because uh I had to let people know that I was going to do this, right? So what did I
Yeah, put
do?
yourself out there.
I started walking around to like different businesses, knocking on doors, and holy cow, I wasn't prepared for the responses that I was getting. Like people were like staring out of their peepholes, like, who is this guy? Like, I was uncomfortable and I'm like, it just felt like I was it just kind of felt creepy. Like it wasn't very welcoming. So that was rough. Just cold calling, knocking on doors as a 20-something-year-old Black male. Uh, and a lot of businesses are not owned by Black people. So it's not like, I just ran, so and then not only am I this young Black guy, I'm also asking to deal with your money.
Yeah, I don't know you, but can
So
I deal with your
yeah.
money?
Yeah. Can you send me over your cash receipts for the last 30 days and I'll help you analyze this? And it's like, yeah, get out of here, boy. But so that was one. And I actually got a couple of clients. The first client that I got was a business that I used to work with. I had held a job there for about a year and they kind of knew my skill set. I did that for a little bit. I stopped doing it because it was really rough on me. And this is when I got introduced with the concept of selling your time for money.
Yeah.
So if I did like 2 hours of work for them or whatever, I would have to bill that out. And regardless, even if you put it at $100 an hour, I mean, the project could really take you 3 to 4 hours and then you make $300-400. But I had a job. So I'm doing that from like 7 and I stay up till like 12, 1 o'clock midnight. And I'm just for $500. I'm like, I can't keep doing this. It was just really rough on me. So I was like, well, this Southern Gent thing, there's a lot of people in the world. I'm really good with style and understanding products. If if I was able to figure out how to make this a thing where a lot of people were interested, well, the customer base is endless because there's so many people in the world. Like just if you take a clothing store, there's one in every 20 miles, right? Like if there's a Gap or I don't know,
An
I don't know much
Next
about the UK,
or
but yeah, H&M or whatever. So
yeah.
I just thought about economies of scale, which were concepts I was familiar with just from going to school in finance and understanding these basic principles, that if I applied that, it would be a much smarter business plan. And it would also suit my skill set of being a creative. At this time, I had gotten into photography and was learning how to take pictures. I'm like, okay, I got the style, got the pictures. I just need people to do this with because I'm very practical. I'm like, starting a whole business, that's a lot of stuff to just do on your own, right? It's like,
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
and that's kind of like how everything came about. It was just like, just slowly but surely trying to figure out who I was and where I was trying to go in life.
Yeah, no, I think that's really brilliant actually. And even the fact that you're able to reflect on some of the like I guess they're labeled as failures, but like it was sort of quite a learning process for you because you knew like, okay, I don't want to be up this late at night earning not little, but it's like it's your sleep as well, and then you got to go into school and stuff like that too, and learning about, okay, how can my time and my money be used and how can I maximize those, and using the skills that you've also got in terms of you saying your style and your creativity and photography. And so yeah, I really like hearing about that, and I think people as well will maybe hear about you at an early age, sort of cutting hair and then cold calling, and that like it can start quite early in terms of the skills and the stuff that you're learning to sort of end up being where you are or continue to evolve, I guess, more than end up where you are.
Yeah, I would just say it was just kind of like a process of betterment, right? Like I just kept, accomplishing goals, and it was just like, well, what's next? What's next for me? What do I want to be good at? Am I happy here? That's one thing that I'm really fond of, is just like a self check. Like, you think about your day and it's like, if you're not happy, I've always had an attitude of, if I have any type of emotion, if I'm angry, if I'm tired, if I feel like just lethargic or whatever, I'm just a solutions oriented person. So I look at stuff like, what can I do about it? So, getting bored and like feeling like I can do more. I just didn't want to wait on anyone. I just wanted to kind of like try my hand and see what I can do, because, you know, I just didn't see any other way out.
Yeah, definitely. And where do you think your sort of business acumens and I guess this drive that you're telling me about, where do you think that sort of came from? Like, did your parents help you nurture it, or was it something you maybe saw in family members, or I don't know? Sometimes people just have it in them, you know?
I've always wondered, this is a great question. So my dad is an engineer. So ever since I was a kid, my dad has had a business partner, and I've always seen him just like go to work. But going to work for me was, my dad had an office with his business partner in Nigeria. So I would go over there after school, and I would see all the workers drawing up blueprints and, basically building out stuff. I didn't know what the heck they were doing. It was like,
Yeah. You
it
look
was
cool
just like,
though. Ah.
yeah, exactly. And I've always kind of seen that. And my mom was a teacher for a long time. And when I was younger, she opened her own primary school. So I don't know where
Okay.
I've gotten the entrepreneurial spirit, but I have to give them a lot of credit, because to me, that was just normal, right? Like they just did stuff. Like I've never I can honestly say both of my parents had job. I have two older brothers. They probably saw a different version of my parents.
Mm.
But since I can remember, you don't really remember anything until you're like 5 or 6. Since I've
Yeah.
remembered, my parents going to work was always them doing kind of, I don't want to say their own thing, because it was very much like a job. They never just like, oh, I don't have to go to work today, I own my own business type of thing.
Yeah.
They were always like on the grind, and my dad would work late hours, but it was like they were doing stuff that they set up. So maybe I just inherit that trait of it being normal to just be able to do something or set up something that you believe in.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think we always, because when they say sort of about parents, like, and as a child you're always sort of observing and you're learning through watching, like through
Hmm.
imitation of what your parents do. So I imagine there probably was an element of that where you saw them, even when you're not conscious at, I mean, you are conscious at 5 or 4, but you don't remember it. But like
Right,
even
right,
just looking
right.
at them and be like, okay, all right, our dad's doing this, or like you said, going over to a shop, seeing all the engineering and the plans and everything else like that. It probably was that learning through imitation. Um,
Exactly. Most definitely.
yeah, which is, it's interesting. Definitely child development and stuff like that. I did psychology and criminology, so I know a little bit about child development. So I always found it quite interesting learning about things
Yeah.
like that.
And the interesting thing when I think back to it is that there was never a conversation. Like I was never pushed by my parents to like be an entrepreneur, or if anything, they pushed us, me and all of us, all three of us boys, to just get an education, do really well at school. There was never this thing of like, okay, what are you going to do? What are you going to start? It was just kind of, they didn't raise us to entrepreneurs. But again, it's interesting because, you know, you soak stuff in that you don't even realize. I honestly don't think that I've even reflected on this till you asked me that question. I've always
That's
just
good.
had a natural drive, but I'm like, man, I got to buy him a gift, because
Yeah, you gotta holler at your
I
parents,
got to give
bro.
them credit. Yeah, because they made it normal. It was normal for me. It didn't feel like something that was impossible, and that sense of um, impossibility is something that I know a lot of people that I'm close to struggle with or feel like they can't get over. Where for me, it was just like, okay, this is just the way that you just live your life. It's just normal.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you were born in Nigeria. When did you
Mhm.
come over to the US? And do you remember what that was like for you as well?
Yeah, it was rough, man. It was 12. I was 12.
Mm.
I was. going into, I was in middle school here. It's a little different in Nigeria, the system. And I was excited about it because my mom would go visit. We have family in England, just like many Africans do, or
Yeah.
like US. So she would go visit and she would come back, or sometimes she would take me and my cousin and bring back stuff like video games, Super Nintendos, the new Street Fighter,
I'm
Mortal
coming back,
Kombat.
guys. We're getting
So
some
I'm like,
keys.
oh, we're going to the States and I'm going to have access to because at that time you had to wait till a trip till you got anything nice. It's like, I
Yeah.
don't know, for whatever reason, it just wasn't available to purchase locally. So I was really excited about moving to the US. And then when I did get to the US, I was still excited, but I wasn't really prepared for the culture shock that I was going to
Mm.
get smashed in the face with. So I remember my first day in class, like kids were just wild. And there was a kid named Greg, and he just kicked his feet up on the desk. And teacher was like, Greg, take your feet off the desk. And he's like, I don't have to do anything. And he's like, Greg, I'm gonna call your mama. He's like, call my mama. And I'm looking at him
Nah,
like,
he's ballsy, bro. He's ballsy.
I was like, because for me, my upbringing and the school that I just came from, we would get whipped with canes, like as just like disciplinary action. It was just like everyone got a whooping. You didn't turn in your homework, you got like 10 lashes. I remember having to turn around from the teacher. It'd be like 3 or 5 of us didn't have your homework, or you were late to class, and it's like, turn around, you get 10 strokes, and it's just normal. And you just had to like you practice your
Yeah,
grimace,
you
and like you try
firm
to
it. You
flex
just
the right muscle, like you know the right place that it's gonna hit so it doesn't like hurt too much. And like
Yeah.
here we were, these kids were just making the teacher cry and didn't care if their parents. It was a complete different culture. So I was culture shocked, and I didn't speak for probably about 6 months. I
Oh
didn't say
wow.
nothing just because I was just soaking everything in.
Mm.
And there's this thing about, we all want to be accepted. So I didn't want to be ridiculed or picked on either. So I was just trying to figure out what this new game plan was. It's like, what kind of game we're playing here. So it was rough. But I adapted over years, and I've loved it. I loved going to high school in here in Houston. It's been amazing getting to see a completely different side of culture, getting exposed to different races, white, black, Asian, Hispanic. I mean, that's something that you don't get. You're not accustomed to when you in an African country. So you learn faster and you see different ways of doing things. And then it, it got to the point where I started going home and educating my family on stuff.
Yeah,
Like,
guys,
you know what I mean?
guess
Because
what happens in the States?
yeah, like that's not how it goes. Like,
Yeah.
oh, this is why this is. So yeah, it was definitely interesting, to say the least. Interesting transition.
Yeah, that is quite interesting actually. I mean, for me, I came here when I was like 9 months old, so I all I know is England. But even I sort of, I think from a Zimbabwean background, the fact is that, listen, if I was ballsy to a teacher like that, I was
Mhm.
more afraid of them telling my mom or my dad that I'd done something
Yeah,
at school. It's like, I can get in trouble with the teacher, but just don't tell my mom. Just just don't go, don't tell my mom. There's always that sort of like, I guess it's a bit of a fear, to be honest with you, of like, nah, I would rather get in trouble at school than with my mother. Um,
exactly.
and
It's
you
all the
see,
same.
yeah, and you
It's
see
the
others around you. It's crazy. Sorry, go
It's the
on.
same. It's the same for all of us, and I think that in traditional African households, you're just raised to respect any elder, every
Mm.
elder around you. Where what I noticed, here, it's more so of you respect your parents, and it's almost like other elders aren't allowed to discipline you. You just kind of have to focus
Yeah.
on how your parents perceive you, and if you get in trouble with them, which changes the dynamic completely, right? Because it leads to not having as high of a sense of respect when you get outside those walls of your own home.
Yeah, which is it's just quite interesting. Like, I know there's the phrase, it takes a village to raise a child.
Hmm.
And you find that quite often within sort of African cultures. I think as well, because maybe not maybe because they're smaller, but I don't know. I think there is more of a community sort of collective, um, I guess collective. what's the word I'm looking for? Collective belonging, whereas here it's more individualistic belonging. I would say that everyone is sort of,
That's a
this is my family and this is what we do. Whereas in African countries and cultures, I think it is more collective.
I totally agree with that. That's the way I see it as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So you came here when you were 12 years old, and it sounded like you started hustling from quite a young age, and we've explored as well how you got Southern Gents started. And so I guess actually I want to know, in terms of you did accounting and you were doing auditing and going around in different businesses. Like, how much did that help you get ready to set up your business and to work with others?
At the time, it helped me tremendously. At the time, I didn't think of it as helped, but I will say, I always knew that I wanted to understand the way that the world works, and I remember even picking accounting as a career. I didn't know what I wanted to do in college. I didn't. I don't think I figured it out. I never figured it out, to be honest with you. I was kind of more of a process of elimination. My dad wanted me to be an engineer like him. He was kind of like nudging. He was kind of like nudging, and I'm a little bit lazy, to be honest with you. I was just like, man, that just sounds like I had taken like calculus in high school, whatever, and I didn't like it. I did well at it, but it was just really, really, really hard. And I'm like, I don't think I want to do that.
Nah.
So I'm like, okay, but I knew that I was good at math. So I'm like, okay, I'm good at math. I was also good in the arts. I was always drawing and stuff. And so I thought about being an architect. It was like, what if nobody liked my designs? Then I'd be broke. So I was like, okay, what else is like mathematical in like career choices? And accounting and I knew the least about accounting. So I was just like, okay, let me try that out.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, but I also did know that like in business, you made a lot of money, at least so it seemed. So I kind of just fell into it, and I started taking courses in my undergrad years or whatever. And I was doing well. So I'm like, let me just keep going. So that's an interesting and pivotal question, because when you're a young auditor in a firm, they kind of ask and try to get a feel of what kind of clientele you want to be on. Do you want to work on oil and gas companies? Do you want to work on publicly traded companies? Do you want to work on private companies? Do you want to work on small companies, big companies? I always pick the small companies. And I wanted to pick the small company because I felt like if I picked a small company, I would be able to learn more. It wouldn't be as big, because with the bigger names, like, let's say you were auditing like a Facebook or Meta now, as they're called, or like, let's say a Square or Apple, you're going to do one tiny piece of the job. And I always disliked being like, I'm not comfortable in ignorance, so I want to understand the process. That's kind of the way that I learn. Is I never tried to memorize things when I was in school. I always try to understand whatever concept I was learning about. So I'm like, if I work on smaller businesses, I would learn more. I would know the ins and outs of their businesses. So I started being placed on all these smaller clients, and I could see how everything ran. And it's a smaller company, right? So a lot of times you'd have 10 to 20 people working in a company from top to bottom. So guess who you have access to? The president, the CFO, the controller, everybody. And you're asking them questions where if you're in a much larger company, you're talking to the supervisor who's reporting to the head. Exactly. And it's like, just goes up and up and up this chain. So
you ain't meeting the Elon Musks or the whatever. What was his name? The guy that done Facebook. I'm forgetting his name.
Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah, you ain't meeting them.
You're not even gonna know where his office is. So at 21, 22 years old, I was booking meetings with controllers and CFOs. Again, I'm not at this point, I'm not thinking that, I'm going to use this information in my business, but I did know that I wanted to have an understanding, because I knew that when you learn something, knowledge is power. They say that for a reason. And so when you have the knowledge, now you can make better decisions, more informed decisions, as opposed to being one small piece of the pie. I read somewhere that it's impossible to find one person who understands completely how the airport works. You've been to an airport, you got the traffic signals, you got the TSA. It's such a big operation, and everyone has to kind of play their part. And when you think about an engine that big, it's like, You've never heard anyone say, "Oh, I want to start an airport." Because it's just not something. It's not something one person does. It takes an
Yeah,
army to
true,
run that
true.
kind of operation. So if you're trying to run any type of operation, you have to be practical and you have to start small. You know what I mean? So it helped tremendously because later on, because there was also a time where I regretted being in. You don't get paid a lot of money. You get paid starting like 40 something, 50,000, and you're working 12 hours a day. So it's really like you're making $12 an hour. Now you have a much better paycheck than an hourly worker when you were in school and college. But there were times where I felt like I chose the wrong career because I'm like, I'm never gonna make any money. I'm gonna I should have been an engineer. Damn it, my dad was right. So, but years later, I started having appreciation for all the business knowledge and understanding, like, okay, a PL. The thing that an ordinary person would have to Google or YouTube or take a course on. I mean, this is what I did for years, so I understood it. And when it came time to set up Southern Gents, I knew that we would have to have like an initial funding and contribution, just the basic of how stuff works. So it's kind of been like a secret weapon, if I must say so myself.
Yeah, definitely. Especially being able to, as you're saying, see smaller businesses and see how the process is run. And yeah, because you can talk to the CEOs, you can even ask them, oh, like, I don't know, you could ask them any questions and you can figure out sort of how they're dealing with it. And I guess at the end of the day, we're not all going to be, if you're going to start a business, we're not all going to be the Zuckerbergs or the Musks of the world. So if you can talk to the people that are doing it day in and day out and that are being successful with it, then it's a lot more like a richness of information that you're getting, isn't it? I was just about to say validity. The psychology is coming back up again. I keep it there, but I don't want to think about that so much.
Yeah, no, you had to ask questions and you were being exposed to new information. And that's why like jobs specifically to me are very important, even though I think we're in this day and time where everybody's kind of, excuse my French, but shitting on jobs, talking about how you don't need a job and how, oh, you should live your life. And, a job is the drug that an employer gives you to forget about your dreams. And
Oh,
there
I've heard
is
that
some
one.
truth. There
Yeah.
is some truth to these things, but where else are you going to learn these skill sets if you never get a job? If you never get a job and get to learn through other people, get to be involved, it's a privilege to have a job. It's a privilege to get paid for handsomely for something that you're good at. Whereas if you just asked an 18-year-old to just go out on his own and just start something, he would probably fail and he would have a really, really hard life. So in this job, I learned a lot of critical thinking skills. I learned how to internally normalize business failures because we were forced to ask questions like, hey, why didn't this operation perform as well as the year before? Why is there a 50% decrease from, and it was like, oh, such and such, this happened in the economy or whatever. So you're getting all this knowledge that you can't get from watching a show, from reading a book, from talking to your family members or friends who know nothing about business.
Yeah.
So where else would you get this information? So it was definitely a cheat code for me that I never planned, but just kind of like fell in my lap. And just because I kept pushing forward, and again, I always want to be the best version of myself that I can be in any environment. It just kind of worked out. And today, I use those skill sets a lot in business and planning when we're coming out with a new collection. Should we come out with a new collection? What price should we charge for this item? Should we hire someone else? How much should we pay for our office space? What's a fair deal? Negotiating contracts or invoicing with manufacturers, or even payment terms. These are all skills that I've just picked up along the way of holding a job for over 10 years. So now with social media, you could probably learn similar skill sets. And I do think you can learn faster, but as they say, there's no better teacher than experience.
Yeah. I really like what you touched on there in terms of like we're in this culture now where, yeah, you're right, it is about finding the dream job, finding your passion, aligning that with something you can make money with. And I think that's great. And that is something I also really want to do myself. But there is a place in society for jobs, for employees, because at the end of the day, sure, you can go and run a big ass company, but you need employees. You know, we need the people that are
Most
nurses,
definitely.
doctors, and social workers, and we need all those people in society to keep it functioning. We can't all just be rich. And I guess it's a bit sad because then some people are like, why can't I be rich? Why can't I do this and that? But I don't know. It's just sort of how our society runs, isn't it? That we need people in every part
But
of
you can
society.
be rich though. I think it's a myth, and I think it's false information. I think not even I think I know that most people will have a better life just from having a job. It's very stressful to be an entrepreneur. I think that there are a few people in society who have. I don't want to say they have a genetic makeup to be an entrepreneur, but it takes a certain level of personality, determination, grit, perseverance. It's very, very hard. But you can make 100, 150, $200,000 a year working a job that you love, even 80K, 75K. It just depends on your spending habits. And so I think a lot of people are in love. There's a book called an E-Myth. The
Never heard
E-Myth.
of that before.
The E-Myth is about the entrepreneur myth, and the myth that everybody thinks that they're going to start a business and they're just going to strike it rich. And when if you look at the facts, something like 80 to 90% of businesses are small businesses, and 80 to 90% of those businesses make the owner takes home a pay of $60 to $40,000 a year. They're just working to keep the lights on. They may make
Yeah.
$300, $400,000 a year, but when they take employee inventory or service employee payroll costs out of it, they're not really making that much. And so the argument of the E-Myth is that a lot of people are better off closing their doors and just maybe just getting a job, or you have to really revamp your business. I'm not gonna. An entrepreneur is a beautiful thing because sky is the limit, right? You can make $100 million a year if you're really good at it, but that's not the case for most businesses, and the facts show that. So we just have to We just have to rethink and push the reset button on how we see the world. There's definitely pros and cons to both sides, but I think that at the end of the day, it just depends on what's the best lifestyle for you. What kind of lifestyle do you want to live? If a lot of people think that the most common thing I hear when people talk about starting a business is like, oh, I want to start a business so I could set my own hours. Guess what? Your hours are going to be 12 to 12, midnight to
Yeah, I've
8.
heard
So
that. I've heard
that's
that.
really like you're going to work 10 times as hard. So if you really want to start a business, there has to be a deeper reason why you want to start the business. And you have to ask yourself and be accountable if you're really cut out for that type of lifestyle.
Yeah, it isn't for everybody. Like I I talked to someone quite a while ago that created this company called Word on the Curb.
Mm.
Um and the episode was titled Does the Work-Life Balance Exist? Because he was saying the exact same thing you were in terms of that, like it's not easy running a business.
Mhm.
Like you're thinking about the business all the time and you're working on it all the time, and you're having to be in the business but also work on the business as well. And that he was saying, yeah, it's really hard, and that's what people don't see about it. We only see, and I guess it's the age we live in now where you can have your phones here and you can just search up somebody, you can be like, oh my gosh, look how great their life is. But
Mhm.
we look at those people that are maybe in business and we don't understand what goes on behind the photo, behind that photo of them being like, I can work in Bali and, you know, I can do my work abroad. But really, they're also stressing about maybe making ends meet because their business has had poor 2 quarters or something along those lines. So,
Yeah, it's crazy because it's not just business too. It's just careers. It's because of I would argue it's because of social media. It's just you see the highlights. We see the bright lights and the highlights. So let's talk about like athletes, like fighters or actors, right? You see them in a big role, but they may not get another role for three years, right? Like you think about your favorite actor. When's the last time you saw him on screen? And so what is that person doing when they're not working? Well, how many jobs are they auditioning for? How many doors get slammed shut in their face? How many roles do they lose? Like, are they going in deficit borrowing to make ends meet? Because we get to go to work every day. They don't. They get
mm,
like 3 opportunities a year, if that. So we tend in society, we tend to look at the people on the mountaintop and we forget that it's a mountaintop for a reason. There's not that much space at the top.
Yeah, I like that analogy. Actually, that's really good. That
Yeah,
definitely
we're
makes
gonna we're gonna
sense.
hit some bars today. Straight up bars. Yeah, no,
Honestly,
but it's a great discussion. I think that more people should think and talk about it, and just do your research. Do your research, and yeah, I'm not arguing for one or the other. Obviously, I'm in the entrepreneur game, but at the same time, I don't think that there's anything wrong with having a job.
yeah. So I guess how have you found being an entrepreneur and working in business? Like, I guess even as well as a black man living in Texas,
Hmm.
we hear a lot about Texas sometimes and deep red states and stuff. Obviously, I don't know much. I listen to whatever I listen to on podcasts about
Yeah,
abortion laws in Texas, but we're not here to discuss that.
yeah, that's another topic. It's but
But
hey,
it
it all
adds,
stems
doesn't
from the
it?
truth. It
Yeah,
does. It
it adds
does.
to your experience because I think there is a lot more right leaning. It's a more right leaning state, isn't it, Texas? So I guess for you, yeah, how have you found running a business as a black man?
Um, First, let me start with just running a business. First of all, so I'd have to say running a business is challenging. It's the most humbling thing that I've ever done because when you're running a business is about. Oh, I don't. What would you say running a bit like if you had to think about a business and what a business is? How would you define that in any way, in any words? Like, how would you?
I guess an entity that is the sole reason I guess is to make profit. Is that sort of what I'd say a business is?
Okay, and I completely agree. But in order to do that, you have to think about the psychology of it. So when you're working a job, everything's based on your input, right? Like you show up, you do as you're asked, or you master the job or the job responsibilities, if you will. When you start or own a business, it's flipped. Yes, you have to figure out a way to earn profits, but that it comes from figuring out how to transact with other people where they're willing to give up their hard-earned dollars for whatever product or service you're providing.
Mm.
So now you may think that you're really smart, you may think you're really good, but like, what does that have to do with me wanting to give up my $200 that I worked overtime for? You see what I'm saying? So it's
Yeah.
like a lot of times people think that they're really smart and they get into business and they fail. It's because you're having to get in other people's head and figure out what the market needs. So it becomes very challenging, becomes very humbling. It's difficult, it's depressing, it's very lonely because if you don't know other people in business or have a close friend group or mentors or things that constantly fuel and feed you, you'll run out of gas quickly because there's not a lot of people to talk to. It's not a conversation where you can just pull up to your favorite bar and just randomly talk to the three guys or gals in there about, oh yeah, this was happening in my business. What about your,
Yeah.
it's a very and then every business is different, right? Like you can know another business owner down the street, but their business could be completely different. They may offer products, you may offer a service. Now, as a black man, it even compounds more because then you start adding the layers of discrimination and just the what's the word I'm looking for here? Uh, Basically, I would have to say that society doesn't think highly of black people, not just black men.
Mm.
So when you bring that into business, that doesn't go away. So if you're a black person in business, you own a restaurant or you own some type of rental service or whatever, people automatically think that what you're offering is inferior because you, by definition, are inferior, right? No one says these things, but it's all racial undertones. It's what they call there's a word for it. It's
I think
I can't remember the word,
I
but
know what you're on about. I know it's gonna annoy me now that
yeah, it'll come around some part in the conversation at some form, but there's these racial undertones where it's like you're having to read between the lines, and it's like, okay, why didn't we get this client? Or it could be even banking, right? You need a loan, like
yeah.
this person gets it, you don't, or they get it and they get this interest rate and you get double that. Manufacturing, some people just don't want to work with you because you're Black. They won't say it that you're Black. Like in the same way that you go to a bar and they don't want to let you in. I don't know if that happens in the UK, but it definitely happens here in
No,
Texas.
that's
It doesn't happen.
crazy.
Oh, what? Like you go to a bar and they're like, your pants are too long. I'm sorry. And that's it. It's like, and then now you looking like, well, can I fold it or something?
Yeah,
Can I
and then you
like
see
just
someone else
roll it
walking
up,
past you, and you're
walk
like,
in with some Birkenstocks
yeah.
and shorts. So it's the same way. So there's a lot of discriminatory practices in business, and what makes it even tougher is that this comes from all places, right? Like a lot of times as Black people, we complain about racism, but we're also racist to ourselves. So, so now you're in business and you're trying to, like you said, earn a profit, but everyone else who's not Black thinks that your product or service potentially is inferior. Black people also think that your products or service are inferior. But here is there's light at the end of the tunnel, because I think that what that does is it builds callous and it makes you the best version of yourself. Because if someone who's done your homework and you're a Black entrepreneur, then you know that it's not going to be easy, right? And you're going to bring your A game. It's like being an underdog. Like if you watch boxing or whatever, the underdog always has this edge and this grit because they know that they're not supposed to win. They know that they're just here, and it's like, all the odds are not in their favor. And so there's a wonderful book by Malcolm Gladwell called David and Goliath. And he talks about how everyone thinks that bigger is better, and everyone thought that Goliath had the advantage, whereas no one saw the hidden advantages that David had. He was faster, he was quicker, he was small, he couldn't easily be caught. And on the other hand, no one also saw the disadvantages that Goliath had, which rumor has it that he was partly blind and he had issues with his vision. And, from all the battles he'd been in, big targets, slow. And so it's the same in business, right? Like bigger isn't always better. There's reasons why, you could have a small neighborhood coffee shop that's getting all the customers and no one's going to the Starbucks down the street. Maybe because that business knows everybody's name or understands the community and the culture and is able to have like chit chat and ask about the customer's kids, or maybe even slide them a few treats or desserts, just little things, a little edge. There's a lot. I haven't read this book, but Charlemagne has a book called Black Privilege. It's along those lines of, even in being underprivileged and discriminated against, you still have an advantage, and you have to figure out what those advantages are. If it's the way that you think, how creative you are, or just not having money, or just not having anything. I don't want to make it seem like I'm a big reader, but throughout my search and my quest for trying to navigate the uncharted waters of being a Black entrepreneur, I have had to like seek out some knowledge. So,
are you a big reader? There's nothing wrong with being a big reader.
I'm not a big reader just because like my mind moves so fast, and I got ADD, so. I'm more of an avid listener. So podcasts are my thing. So I'll do audiobooks, but I will read. I can't read for sport. I read for purpose. So if there's something that I want to read, a newsletter, I will read it. If it's something that I'm struggling with, I will read it. I'll find a way to overcome my attention deficiency and just focus, because now I have a huge appetite for whatever this knowledge is. So Damon John has a book titled Power of Broke, where he talks about the power of being broke, which is the case for a lot of us who are minorities, whatever race you might be. And the power of broke is pretty much, when you don't have money, you have to be creative. You have to work with what you have. You have to figure out how to make something good out of nothing. While on the contrary, those who have money try to throw money at everything. They try to pay for all the services. When you don't have money, you do things like pop-up shops. You just show up and you just, you tell people, and your goods may spread through word of mouth. So you have these hidden advantages where, if you have money, there are just certain things that you're not going to undertake because you think it's not worth your time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because you actually don't really need to. You don't need to get creative because you know that you can buy what you need to buy, or you can, like, if you like, there's a subscription service that I wanted for my YouTube videos, but it's quite expensive, and so you need to adapt. So, and I'm sure there's others that can't afford those things but are making YouTube videos which are excellent quality, and then they're using different sounds. So yeah, you're right,
Yeah.
you have to get creative. Like, you have to sort of use what you've got, and then, and then usually the money then does come, when you're
Right.
then pursuing something and you're being creative and you're being different. Because like we said, if you haven't got the money to do something, then you're usually doing something which other people aren't, so then people will gravitate towards that.
You just gave me a thought, because that comes down to, and because it basically, it also creates a market, right? Because there's this whole thing now with what's called UGC. I don't know if you're familiar, and it's basically user generated content. It started with trends from like TikTok and stuff, but it's basically, you'll see a lot of ads now that are very organic and filmed with a cell phone. And that really started from smaller companies, smaller businesses just showing their process because they didn't have a fancy production cinema camera to film stuff with. So social media came out and people just started creating content. It's really attention grabbing, and someone watches that and they feel like, this is for me. This
Yeah.
is not someone trying to oversell me in something. To just, oh, I saw her make this beautiful head wrap that I really love, and she made it by hand, and now I want it because I feel like I'm supporting her. So all these things are privileges that a lot of times, as minorities, we overlook, because we're always looking at the big and shiny thing, when the best thing you can do is start, and you'll be surprised who you could connect with and inspire.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I guess for you, you've sort of started your business and it's been going on for a while. I guess I wanted to know, maybe, what are your future aspirations for your business? What are you hoping to achieve?
Right now, I have to be honest with you, it's a very different time. There's a lot of businesses. I think that for any business, not just our business, even a business as big as Apple, the biggest aspiration has to be just staying alive.
Yeah.
And people take that for granted. Even as a human being, like, you're like, oh, what are your goals 5 years from now? Staying alive. You know what I mean?
Staying
Like,
alive.
because
Yeah.
if I'm not here, if you're not here, what sense does it make? So sometimes it's the little things, like just taking care of yourself and taking care of your health. And in the same way that you have to do that as a person, you have to do that for your business. You have to take care of the business's health. So it's a very scary time, because things change so fast and things move so fast, and businesses get caught in the crossfire all the time. This new trend starts, and this other business wants to take it on. Like, we've seen so many businesses come and go, like BlackBerry, and I don't know, social media channels like MySpace or
Yeah.
Vine, or
Oh,
and
wow,
there's tons of
fine.
all these other businesses that have come and go. So I think my main focus is just focusing on creating something that stands the test of time, and also trying to remind ourselves why we're doing this and making sure that we enjoy it, because I have a fear that if we focus too much on success, on like just the financial success of the business, and we're not taking care of how we feel about the business internally. If we're happy individually with all of us running a business, our families are in a good place, then it's really all for nothing, because guess what? You can't take none of this stuff with you. And a lot of times we over glamorize success and business and stuff like that. The business for me is just a means to an end. Like, there's an aspect where we want to serve the consumers, and we want to make sure that we're putting out product and that really matter and resonate with people. But it really starts with us. We have to be happy. And so it's this constant balance of work and life, in a sense, right?
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of people who have successful businesses, but their lives are shit. I don't want that.
No.
So that's the biggest aspiration. And then otherwise, for the business specifically, just constant growth, right? We believe that we've created something that really changed how people view themselves. So if we can touch as many people as possible, and it's so cliche, this term, but really be a household name, be known for as a good product. We, as much as possible, want to stay away from being a trendy brand. We want to be something like a Ralph Lauren or a Levi or Converse, Chuck Taylor, where it's just a go-to for those things, whether it's a fedora or a men's boot or a nice overcoat that people really love. And I want our products to be hand-me-downs. I want our products to go to like grandsons and nephews and all that good stuff, because it's kind of like a rite of passage. Like, like, this is a beautiful item that I wore to my office for years while I was like
Yeah.
providing for my family, and I want you to have it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I think
I
that
get
that
you.
aspect of cherishable goods, it has kind of like gone away, and it's not really just about the product. I think it's about what the products say to people. So I know that's a roundabout way, and that's a very unorthodox answer about talking about business aspirations, but I just happen to think that it's very hard to focus on success of a business when we take ourselves and our personal lives and our mental health and our happiness out of it.
I could not agree with you more, and I actually really liked your answer, to be honest with you, because I do think, like, as we said, like as I said earlier with the person I talked to, like, can you have a work-life balance? I think you have to sort of try and strive for that as much as possible, because as you're saying, you've got somebody that has got a really successful business, but his home life is really rubbish. So realistically, and you can probably go and find lots of evidence that sort of shows you in terms about loneliness and needing
Mhm.
family and community and connection with
Suicide and
people.
depression.
Yeah, that
Hmm.
you then end up having depression and suicide. And then what? Then you've got no business, no family, and you're dead, or you're really sad and you're really alone. It's not, to me, it's not worth it. That
Hmm. Like, what
sacrifice
was it
isn't
all
worth it.
for?
Yeah, definitely.
And
And it's
so,
go on.
no, sorry, not to cut you off, but when we talk about work-life balance, for a lot of us, it's not just a business conversation; it's a success conversation. Your work is your life. You have to figure out how to blend them you know, into each other. There's this new concept. It's really not a new concept, but the concept of a home office, right? It's now the work is in your home.
Yeah,
So,
working from
where
home.
is the
Blah, blah,
work-life balance, right? So, and that comes into aspect of family, right? Like, your work has to flow with your family. You have a lot of careers that are not conducive with family, or maybe if it's not conducive to the traditional sense of family, then you have to be creative as a person. If you're a person who's on the road all the time because that's how you make money, then you may have to live a lifestyle where maybe you can take your family with you on the road as well. I know a couple of
yeah.
people who do that because I just think it's a sensible way of life. You don't want to sacrifice. You don't want to have to sacrifice one, because they kind of go hand in hand. If you have to have a family, if you have a family, you have to provide for that family, right? So you can't just sit at home or take the most comfortable job. And if you're successful, you probably want a family because you want to create your own tribe and people who you're able to enjoy the success with. So it's really a blend, and people try to create a hard line between the two. I think the happiest people figure out that work-life balance is a myth, and it's really just um, a perfect mixture of figuring out how to balance two worlds at the same time.
Yeah. So I guess for you,
Hmm.
you became a father recently as well.
Hmm.
And congratulations for that too. How have you found becoming a father and running a business?
Um, it's tough. It's tough. But it's really not that bad. But before you have a child, you got to have a woman, right? So that's one key part of the equation that's probably
Yeah.
missing. And I would say that, man, I have an amazing wife. Like, she makes my life easier, and yeah, that's a huge part. And I think that when we talk about masculinity and like men and black men, I think that that's something I have, I see a lot of like trending social media clips from different podcasts. That's something that people don't talk about. And I actually think that's the most important thing, because being a father can be a beautiful thing, or it could be an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
And I'd say choosing the right woman, especially for us as black men, but for any man, is the most important thing that you could ever do for yourself. because a woman will, like, life is tough, right? You have to get out into the world. And the problem with masculinity by default and definition is that masculinity is the equivalent of expectation. If you're a man, the expectation is set forth for you before you come in this world are like, longer than you and I can make a list of. You got to provide, you're supposed to have a good job, you're supposed to do all these things.
Yeah.
And so that really wears on the spirit. And I see there's a huge epidemic of men and having issues with mental health and depression right now. And it's really because of the burden that society places on men. And I think that the easiest way to combat that is just to have a solid partner who's always uplifting you, right? Could you imagine going through life or having 1, 2, 3, 4 kids and not having someone who's filling into that cup and recharging you, and you telling you like, hey, you go do this, I'll handle this, or like, hey, you need to get some rest today. Oh, do you need something to eat? I noticed you've been working all day. Like, okay, I'm gonna whip something up real quick. Like, that really is the secret nugget to being a great father, to being a great husband, to being a great businessman, because now you got this I don't know, like this you just got this queen by your side who just makes sure that you're good. And even when you may think that you can't do something, we all need cheerleaders in life. Like, you watch the best sports team, they got the fans for them. We talk about home field advantage. You need
Here
support.
Liverpool have Anfield. Everyone, home court advantage and
Exactly.
NBA and all of that. Yeah, it's all, everyone loves to be in their home and what that brings with it, the comfort, the joy,
Exactly.
you're going to be loved and accepted where you are.
Where's game 7 at? Who's got the championship advantage?
Yeah,
Like, all this, you know what I'm saying? So
Milwaukee
if you
Bucks,
have
but
if you've got a solid partner, then everything becomes easy. But to answer your question directly on parenting, it's or being a father, it definitely becomes a whole lot easier once you have a solid partner. So I implore all gentlemen to, like, do their best, to be diligent in trying to pick a great partner. It'll make your lives easier. But parenting makes you grow up really quickly. So for me now, it's like limited, just there's really no time for fluff. Like, I've had to trim out all the fat in my personal life. So things that don't matter, like, people hit me up, text me up, like, what you doing tonight? Nothing, playing with these 2 boys.
Sorry guys, a bit busy.
Exactly. Or planning for the next day or what have you. So it just like, and then some days, like, I remember in my 20s, like, I may go out and like have a good time with my buddies and like be hungover and just stay in bed all day and just like, oh, I'm tired. Well, my kids right now are like the alarm clock. If the alarm clock doesn't go off, they're gonna pop up and they're going off, and like, you got to get up. And it's like, I just look at them and I just think like, isn't it amazing for us as humans to be able to create another human? So it's almost like this miracle, these miracles that I get to stare at every day. And then I also think about the responsibility. I'm a person who I project a lot in life, meaning I try to think ahead. I try to think forward. So I'll look at their faces, and I'm immediately seeing a 13-year-old face saying, "Dad, I want to go do that. Dad, I want to join this sports club," or "Dad, I want to whatever." And I don't want to be the person that tells them that we can't do something because I couldn't get my shit together.
Yeah.
So you think about what kind of motivation and fire that lights up under you, and it's also I could also see where it's like a little bit discouraging for some because it may set a high expectation. But again, that's where the partner comes in, because then it's like we're doing this together and as a family, as opposed to as a man, I have to make sure that my kids are good.
Yeah. I also wanted to add on to that.
Mhm.
I think in terms of what you were employing men to do, and that finding a good partner for yourself, finding someone that can uplift you, I also want to implore men that we also got to do that for our women too, because especially for Black women, we have the term intersectionality, and they bear the experience of being a woman and Black and the discriminations that come with both of those. So as men, as Black men and men, it definitely is hard to exist, and the expectations that are upon us. But I think even for women now, because they're also, we've had this conversation actually on the dinner table with my family, all saying, is there like a crisis in masculinity? And my point was that I think we've had women and female empowerment that has come through the sort of the 90s, this 80s, and sort of now you got girl bosses, and women have been really promoted to be able to be themselves and to be able to hold themselves up. But then there's a lot of pressure that comes with that. And then you're still also, you know, we see that there are women that do a lot of the tasks at home and have to work. So I think for as men, let's also, you know, we want our woman to be our cheerleader, but we also got to be their cheerleader. And we've got to be helping them, you know, in the household activities, or, you know, just making it easier for both of us, you know, and he's making both of our lives easier, then just makes it much easier. You know what I mean?
1,000%. I couldn't agree with this more. And my wife and I talk about this often. And you know, there's this whole thing about the feminist movement and stuff like that. It almost feels like there's a battle of the sexes going on right now, especially
A
in the
little
Black
bit.
community. Yeah, like especially in the Black community, you see a lot of like red pill, blue pill type. Like, are you in a blue team or the red team? Like, like who are you rooting for? Type thing. And it's sad, honestly, because it almost seems like a competition of who's right, who's wrong. And in reality, we need each other. We need each other more than we could ever imagine. We need to pour in our women as much, if not more, than they pour into us. We need to uplift them. We need to protect them. Because if you think about it, if we don't do it, who will? And, you know, it's so unfortunate to see Black men talk badly about Black women as though our mothers aren't Black women. You know, you think about that
Yeah.
like that. It's like it's kind of crazy to me. But I think that a lot of the things going on right now, and to just have a transparent, accountable conversation on the topic, is I tell my wife that the feminist movement to me has been born out of men who have mistreated women. So a lot of women have grown up seeing their women being mistreated or being kicked to the curb, or, you know, mishandled by their fathers or men who were in their lives. And they're saying, I'm not going to be a statistic. I'm not going to go down their path. And you can't really blame them. And so we're the ones who lead. We lead our women, right? So we need to, as much as possible, find a way to break through to our women and let them know that we support them in whatever we're doing, and we support all women, and that this is not a state of trying to be the guy. Like it's the world. It's very difficult for a man or woman to raise kids by themselves. So if we're having an argument of who's right and who's wrong, we're wasting our time, because the kids grow up and they watch all of that stuff and they internalize it. And I think it's the reason why we're seeing a lot of the things going on today in younger children. Um, we need to get families back together. We need to celebrate relationships. We need to celebrate love, specifically Black love. And there's nothing more important than raising children in a two-parent household. And that's probably the biggest difference that I saw uh, emigrating from Nigeria when I did, is that a lot of my friends were in single-parent household, and I would hear these horror stories. Um, so I want to take a moment to compare and contrast. In Africa, like there's Africans are ambitious because we come from a world where there's little to no opportunity. You can't
Yeah.
just be 18 and go get a job, or I'm moving out, or you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
oh,
The
I'm gonna start a
differences.
YouTube channel. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't work that way. So for someone who comes from a different continent, whether it's Latin America or Asia somewhere, and they come into this world of wonderful opportunities, they're going to take advantage of this, because it's like they're seeing something that they've never been without. On the contrary, I saw in a lot of my African American friends a breakdown of family, which is something that we Africans are very ignorant to. We really don't understand it because we haven't seen it. Some of us have experienced it, but it's very prevalent in the African American culture, to have gone through abuse at home and unspeakable acts, trauma, physical and mental trauma, or having been in a foster home or foster care, things like that. And regardless of the absence of presence of opportunity, when someone's mind is broken, that opportunity doesn't matter because you're not even able to see the opportunity. So when we talk about opportunities and we talk about being the best version of yourself, the
Yeah.
first step is to creating an environment where young people can really thrive and can have a healthy state of mind. Because if someone's grown up and they're 18, 19, 20, and all they've seen is trauma, addiction, and abuse all their life, how could you expect them to take advantage of opportunity? Because they're not even thinking clearly. They have these
Yeah.
demons inside of them that they never may be able to escape. So I just want to stress the importance of relationships and family, because no matter, I see a lot of people who are like, "Oh, I can do this on my own. Like I'm providing for my kid." But what our kids need is love, support, and presence. Like I don't remember almost any gift my parents bought for me as a child. I just remember when they were and when they weren't present at my games or
Yeah.
events. So yeah, it's a really tough conversation to have, but I think also a very important one as well.
Yeah, I do agree with you. And this is not a knock against single mothers or single fathers or anything, because obviously there's circumstances in which that's led to you being a single mother or single father. And sometimes it is domestic violence, sometimes it is drug addiction and of a partner or things like that. So there's no shame, and there's no, because I know those things also come with a lot of shame too. So there's no shame and there's no shade being given to any of them. But I do agree with you. I working in the care industry and social care, you do see the fact that there are children that have gone through traumatic experiences and that they haven't had a stable home, and it does impact them later on to their earlier lives. I think there's statistics which I can't remember, like care leavers are X times more likely than other people of their age to have mental health or to go into prison. And it makes sense because we talked about child development earlier, and Balby and his babies, if anybody did psychology, he took the mothers away from these children, and they ended up impacting them quite negatively. And of course it would, because you need that. We need that as humans. We need that as children and babies, to grow up with our parents and to have that nurturing, safe environment, and an environment where you can take risks, and they're sort of controlled risks. You're not being, because a lot of these children that we talk about that are in care, they've had to be adults really early in their lives, so they haven't
One
got to
thousand
have their
percent.
childhood and have their brain develop at a good pace where they can take risks and where they can challenge, and have their parents still be like, maybe this is the best way to do it. And there's a lot of learning within that system. So yeah, I 100% agree with you, and I know some people might not, but I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what is there is to disagree to, because it's just more of a conversation of having empathy for everyone around us, and supporting each other and placing an emphasis on love, I guess is what I'm speaking to clarify, and not things. We have to try our best to create a happy home, and we have to re-examine and redetermine what that looks like. And sometimes it's just like a joint households, and it's a beautiful thing. But I think that we need to come together and stop having a battle of sexes, because it's just not productive. And I feel like the rest of the world just ends up taking advantage of us. And this is when, for me, I feel a deep responsibility of why entrepreneurship is important for those who are able to. Because now, when you're talking about these young men and women who maybe don't have the best resumes or didn't go to the best schools, but need an opportunity in life and need more than a job, need a place to come to work where not only are they getting a wage, but they're getting inspiration, and they're getting some mentorship about how to steer the course, because they may not had those that father in their lives for whatever reason. It really does take a village, and it's a wonderful topic and conversation, because we all we got. We all we got.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Yeah, it does. I think, yeah, it does take a village to raise a child. I think that's something that will always sort of stick with me. And that will be hopefully when I have children one day, there'll be a part of that. I can wait though.
No rush, no rush.
No rush.
Yeah.
No.
I know your mom's is asking, but yeah, you take your time, man. Because look, once they pop out, they're never going back in.
Yeah, it's not that old age thing of, yeah, if I push you out into the world, I can take you out of it. No, it doesn't work. The threat doesn't work. So I guess I wanted sort of just to maybe ask you, we've talked about you being a parent. I wanted to know, how has fatherhood impacted you?
I think it's made me a better person. It's reminded me that I'm third, if not fourth now, right? Like after the wife, after the two boys. But it's good because I've never really been a person who was always consumed with self. We're all selfish, and I think that we all should be selfish. But fatherhood is about selflessness, and fatherhood is about love, and fatherhood is about community. It's about leadership. So. Um, it's easy to say these things, but once you become a father, it becomes a forced sense of like uh, commitment and this love and this leadership. Because I look at my son, and whatever I do, he does. Right, and he's only 2 years old. If
Yeah.
he sees me, I noticed that he never wanted to brush his teeth. So there's times when he would run in the restroom and I'm brushing my teeth. And now he wants to brush his teeth. He's like,
Yeah.
"Ugh."
Dad brushes his
It's
teeth.
like
Let me
that,
go.
yeah. And it's like I'm cleaning the yard. He wants to be out there with me, picking up leaves and mowing the lawn, even though he's too young to like hold the lawnmower. But
Just
so
imagine him
I'm being in
trying.
exactly. I'm being intentional about showing him the value of hard work, being an example. And it's tough because you hear a lot of celebrities talk about I'm not a role model. And you got to think about, why do they say that? Because it's a responsibility. And
Mm.
when you're a role model, you don't have the liberty or the anonymity of screwing up all the time without care, which you can do when you're a younger person or single person. But when you become a parent, a father, a mother, even an older sibling, sometimes others are watching you. So that's kind of how it's transformed my life. It's forced me to tighten up, and not that I was just doing whatever before, but
Just going
it's a
willy-nilly. Just
it's a different level. It's a different level, man. It's a different game. But I'm excited about it because now it's like it's this new world, right? The kids are so unpredictable. Like they do things that I'd never, like just walking in the door and this little person just runs up to you and hugs you. There's no amount of money that could ever give any person that feeling. And not saying that everyone should have kids, but young people are the future, and we have to invest in them, whether you choose to have kids in life or not. It's important to just be around them, their innocence, their pure joy, the way they see the world. It reminds us to bring the kids out of ourselves, right? Like
yeah.
it's important for us to dream. And I think with having been around in the world long enough, it's very easy for you to forget to dream, or that it's even possible to be happy, or, you know, being in the environment you're in. It's like it could be really difficult sometimes to see just a person crack a smile because they've been through so much. So it's important to surround ourselves with those innocence of young people. And I'm just thankful and privileged that I had the opportunity to become a father. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I really agree with your sentiment there, because like you're saying, children remind you of dreaming and playing. And I'm sure while you were single, you didn't have to get all the toys out and or throw them around playing WWE and like using your, like, I'm sure you used your play, but definitely not in terms of how you engage with your children.
Hmm.
And it's just, and at that moment of time, you're just present, you're just there.
Yes.
You're not
Yeah.
thinking about all the other things you've got to do. You're just thinking about, oh my gosh, I'm gonna throw him on the sofa and he's gonna laugh and I'm gonna laugh, and it's just you're in the moment. And yeah,
Hmm.
I haven't had those moments, but I mean, I'm quite a I'm quite paternal, I would say, generally.
You'll
I'm
be a
the
great dad someday. I know you will.
thank you, thank you. I'm the oldest of two siblings, so I enjoyed being big brother. And whenever I'm really good with kids, there's one of my friends' moms, one of my mom's friends. we went over to their house and they had a little girl that were there, and like they were all talking, and me and her were just playing, like we were just like moving stuff around, like, and I was having a great time. And my mom says that she always asks about me. So it's great. I think it is great to be reminded of, you know, you do have an inner child in you, and it's good to express that. It's good to be able to see that in another child as well.
Tino, you took the words right out of my mouth, because one thing that I forgot to mention, and you just did beautifully, is remembering to be present. One of the things that my son does, or the best thing he does, is there some times where I'm just banging away at the laptop as usual, because ain't no such thing as work-life balance. But he'll come to me and he'll just like, no, no, and he'll like close my laptop with his hand.
So
And I'm just like, and I feel so bad, because I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. I'm ignoring you. I'm here, but I'm not here. And those moments are really powerful for me, because this person who's not even been here on this earth more than 24 months could tell that I'm not engaged and I'm not interacting with them, and my mind is somewhere else. And every time he does that, it's kind of like, you know, someone could tell you, like your mom could tell you, Tino, you've been on that game too much, or whatever, right? Like you need to stop doing that. But it's just like the ultimate, like, it's kind of like a hand of God, like just stop.
You're good. You're good.
Exactly. You're done for the day. And I'm like, okay, I just put it up, and it's just like, and I just look at him and I smile. And I could be having a shitty day, could be having a rough day. I could be, you know, responding fiercely to an email or whatever has happened that day. All those feelings just go away. And it just reminds me that nothing else matters. And it's really it's not that deep. You know what I mean? Like, the gift of life is being present. And sometimes we just got to enjoy it. We just got to enjoy being here.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. I've been saying I agree with you, but that's because we're spitting facts. So it's all good.
Most definitely.
I wanted to ask you my final question, which I ask all my guests. But if there's a young Black boy listening to this conversation, how is there something that you know, or something that we've talked about, can help them with an understanding of themselves?
Okay. I'd like to ask for a little bit assistance from you, since
Sure.
you are in an environment where you are exposed to a lot of young men. What would you say, perhaps, that a lot of young men are struggling with right now?
Oh, I would say I think there definitely is an expectation on sort of how to exist in the world currently. How can we be, you know, great? How can we be successful? How can we maybe have it all? Um, and even just for me, maybe not as much, but I think there are some men that they still find it hard to display their emotions. And I won't lie, I still definitely do find it times hard to express my emotion when I need to, and to be vulnerable. So I think the expectations of what it means to be a man is something that I think still weighs heavily on young men, especially now knowing that we can, especially with the information of like, you can do this to improve your life, you can do that. You can't be ignorant to it, but then you've also, you know, you're still struggling with it.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I heard a lot of things there: success, expectation, just what does it mean to be a man? And I think I have like 3 points that could really help a lot of young men out there. The first thing I would say is just commit to being the best version of yourselves, right? Run towards hard. What are the things that you think that are hard, right? Like exercising, living a healthy life, reading. What are you feeding yourself physically and mentally? What are you consuming? Start listening to podcasts. So really strive to be the best version of yourselves. Like, don't be lazy. Life is hard as a man, and you're going to have a lot to be asked of you. You think of a fighter going into a 12-round fight, and you could, I don't know if you've seen the movie Creed, it kind of breaks down,
Yeah.
it breaks down just the training and the preparation for such a gruesome match. And the way that you prepare for that is you simulate those experiences, right? You put yourself through the fire and you do difficult things, right? Communication, master the art of communication, managing your emotion. And these are all things that you can learn easily now from, maybe not so easily, but from reading books, from listening to podcasts, from participating in a Toastmasters around you. Just try to be present and do the difficult things in life. So uh, when you're faced with these challenges, you're not blindsided by them. It's almost like you feel like you've been here before, right? Like think
Mm.
about someone not believing in you and you going to a job and them not expecting you to be well spoken. Be well spoken, be on time, be well dressed, be everything that you're not supposed to be, quote unquote, by society. That's the first one. The second thing I'd say is try as much as possible to live a simple, minimalist life as a Black person, specifically a Black man. And that's because a lot of times our popular culture can be very toxic. When we go back to expectations, as a man, you're supposed to have a super nice car, you're supposed to have a beautiful condo, you're supposed to have all these things, right? So figure out a way to uh, be in control over your wants and commit to your needs. Understand separating what's a want from a need. What are the things that you need? Keep things at the bare minimum because you're doing yourself no justice by piling on to what society is expecting of you if you have an insurmountable amount of wants, right? So, not saying that you don't have nice things, but pick your vice. If you like a car, get a nice car, but live in a simple, cozy apartment or get roommates. There's just all these little hacks to live in a simpler life because I think that's where the breakdown really starts is men get out of school, high school, and now it's time to get a job and now it's time to start getting into those folds of paying bills and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So the more that you consume, the more that you're going to exhaust yourself and your resources and the time available for you to put yourself through those hard things like reading books, podcasts, exercising, eating healthy. So live a simpler life. And this is easier said than done, but it's well worth it. The last and final thing I'd have to say is find your superpower. Life is about skills, right? And we've talked about discrimination a lot throughout this conversation, and it's something that I would say all Black men at some point are going to be faced with, and it's something that could be very crushing to the soul, like just having to accept the reality that you're just not going supposed to be great at anything. You're not the person for the job. Oh, you're not who I'm going to marry or who whatever it may be. When you equip yourself with skill, you'll find that you continue to knock down doors because I heard this somewhere and the saying goes, people are more selfish and think more about themselves than they think about how anyone looks, what school they went to, what religion they believe in. So if you equip yourself with skill and you can always add value to other people's lives, people find a way to forget what you look like if you're Black, if you're, so like Denzel is one of the most popular actors in the world
Yeah.
for a reason. So people who have skills overcomplish obstacles, and you're in charge of figuring out what those skills are. And this goes back to my point number one. If you're doing everything that's difficult in life, and if you're putting yourself through challenges and taking up new tasks, trying to learn new things, and giving it your best and being the best version of yourself, at some point you're gonna find things that you excel at over the average person, and that is your superpower. And the reality is, no one can or will do it for you. You have to do it yourself. So find that superpower, gentlemen, and the world is a beautiful place to be in.
Awesome, 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 awesome. Yeah, I don't even want to add on to that because I think that's perfectly said. So no, thank you, Fola, for coming onto the podcast. I really enjoyed it. This has definitely been a long episode, but I love long episodes. I love long chats. So I've really enjoyed it. And yeah, really thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Tino. This was like a therapeutic session. I appreciate it. I'm always excited to just share my journey and path and everything that I've learned in hopes that, it would help somebody young out there see the world differently, because I've definitely, throughout everything I've accomplished in my life, there's been moments where I definitely wish I've had someone who would hold my hand through the most difficult aspects of life. But yeah, it's a beautiful time to be alive. It's a beautiful time to be a Black man or a Black woman or a person in general. And you're doing a wonderful job with this podcast. And thanks for having me. And I hope to be back soon.
No, brilliant. No, definitely. I'm eager for episode 2. So definitely. Thank you very much, Fola.
Thanks, Tino. Have a great one.
So, now that you have listened to the episode, I want to thank Fola for coming onto the podcast and for talking to me. We had a really interesting conversation, and even afterwards, I think we stayed on the Zoom call for like 40 more minutes just chatting. And that was really valuable to me as well. So I really thank you, Fola, for taking time out of your day to chat with me for the podcast, but then to chat with me afterwards too. I think a lot of people would have got some good value out of this episode. And even though this episode is a longer one than usual, guys, I really hope you stuck with it and got some real good nuggets of information out of it, because I think we covered a lot. And I liked that we also shared our perspective on relationships, but also the fact that as Black men we want cheerleaders by our sides, but we also got to be cheerleading our women too. So I really liked that too, and talking about that. And yeah, choosing a right wife, a right partner to be with, I think is essential. It is very essential. And so I don't think I have much more to say, guys. I'm going to put all the books that Fola talked about into the show notes, so you can go and look for those. If you check out my website as well, they'll be much easier to find too. And I'm going to put some extra YouTube videos, some extra resources up as well on my website. So my website, the link will be in the show notes, but for those that don't know, www.blackandraw.co.uk, and you can just go on episodes and then you can go and find it. So I thank you very much for listening, guys. Please like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening to the podcast, subscribe to the podcast. Leave a comment on Spotify. I ask little questions so you can pop your answers into there. But wherever you're listening, wherever you're watching, even so, just drop me a message on social medias at Black and Raw, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Or if you want to find me on LinkedIn, you want to drop me a message on LinkedIn. It's my name. So, you can find that out pretty easily. But I really thank you guys for watching. Really thank you for listening. Really thank you for engaging. And I hope you have a good day, and we will talk soon.